Hello, my friend. Tonight, we drift back in time over 800 years ago to a city bathed in gold laced with incense and lulled by the whispers of ancient prayers, Constantinople, a place where emperors once ruled in robes of silk, where the sky kissed the domes of Hagia Sophia, and where history itself took slow, steady breaths. But something is coming, and it doesn't march with the roar of invaders or the thunder of infidels. No, it sails under Christian banners. It prays in Latin. It arrives not as an enemy, but as a brother until the fires begin. In this strange, sleepy journey, you'll hear how knights meant to defend the Holy Land turned their swords toward a sister in faith. Not out of hate, but debt, greed, politics, and maybe a bit of divine confusion. If you lived in that time, you wouldn't survive the food, let alone the politics. You might faint from the incense. You'd probably get lost in the palace before lunch. But tonight, you don't have to survive, just listen. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Now, turn off the lights, lower the AC, pull your blanket up, and let's slip quietly into the ash and marble of Constantinople. Let's go. The Sleeping Empire. As you settle in and your mind begins to drift not far, but far enough to forget the room you're in, the flicker of a candle fades, your blanket grows heavier, and now you're no longer in bed. You're in the year 1195. The sun is setting over Constantinople. It glows like molten gold across rooftops, topped with copper and lead. The domes of Hagia Sophia shimmer like a dream. In the harbor, Byzantine ships sway softly against the water, more asleep than anchored. Seagulls circle lazily, as if even they are in no rush. The city breathes in silence. Not the silence of peace, but the silence of something old, tired, and vaguely aware that its time is slipping. For 1,000 years, Constantinople has been the jewel of the Christian world, the last stronghold of the Roman Empire, a place where East and West blur into incense silk and theology. It is a city that believes in its own immortality. But tonight, it is dozing. You walk slowly through the streets. The cobblestones under your feet are polished smooth by centuries of sandal and soldier. A woman waters a pot of basil on her balcony. A baker sweeps flour from his doorstep. The priest chants softly behind closed chapel doors. There's no panic here, no fear, just routine, dust, and gold. Inside the great palace, once home to emperors who claim divine authority, the corridors are quiet. A single eunuch hurries by robes, brushing marble eyes down. Mosaics along the walls still sparkle, but they're cracked tiny fractures running like spider webs through saints' faces. No one has repaired them in years. Emperor Isaac II Angelus is on the throne, though. On the throne is generous. He's more present in name than power. Surrounded by corrupt ministers and a bored court, he drifts through ceremonial obligations like a man wandering through fog. Occasionally he hosts games in the hippodrome. Fewer people come each time. The cheers grow thinner. The empire is tired. Not broken, not yet, but sleepy in that way old things are, right before they crumble. Beyond the city walls, the world is shifting. Venice is rising. The Crusaders are restless. The Pope is whispering of debts and holy wars. But inside Constantinople, it still feels like a Sunday afternoon nap that's lasted 100 years too long. Even the guards along the Theodosian walls yawn in their posts. No one's breached these defenses in centuries. Why would anyone start now? But you know what they don't. Because you've seen the future. Or maybe you're just listening closely enough to the breeze. It carries the scent of smoke, not from a cook fire, but from something much larger, something coming by sea, something that doesn't knock at the gate but claws its way through with fire and rope and prayer twisted into conquest. Tonight, though, the city sleeps. You pass a merchant locking up his stall muttering about taxes. You pass a beggar mumbling in Latin and Greek blending curses with blessings. A cat winds through your legs, purring like it knows the empire better than anyone else ever could. You pause, look up. Above you, The stars begin to blink awake. The moon rises just behind Hagia Sophia like a gentle omen. Not good, not bad, just watchful. The city exhales, and you realize something strange. For all its pride, all its faith, all its gold and stone and hymns, Constantinople is not ready. Not for what comes next. Not for betrayal from brothers. Not for fire from fellow Christians. Not for the crusade that forgets its own purpose. But that's still to come. For now, the basil burns sweet. The water in the cisterns is cool. And the empire dreams. Just like you. The Fourth Crusade begins. You wake the next morning, not in your bed but in Venice. It's early spring in the year 1201. The canals smell faintly of salt and fresh bread. You're standing in a busy harbor watching a forest of masts gently sway in rhythm with the Adriatic Sea. It's loud but not chaotic. It's organized, purposeful, expensive. The Fourth Crusade has begun, or more accurately, it's being negotiated. And, like most things in this world, it begins not with a prayer, but with a bill. The Pope has called for another holy war. The last few didn't go as planned. Jerusalem is still in Muslim hands. Christian kings are frustrated. Faithful pilgrims are exhausted. But Venice is interested, not in salvation, but in ships. You see, these crusaders, most of them French and German knights, don't own boats. They need transportation. The Venetians offer to build them a fleet big enough to carry 30,000 men across the sea. The price, 85,000 silver marks. The Crusaders agree. They sign the deal, shake hands, and go back to recruiting. They write to lords and barons, call for volunteers, and preach from pulpits. The money trickles in slowly. But the problem is, Crusaders are dreamers, and dreamers don't always have coin. By the summer of 1202, only about 12,000 Crusaders show up in Venice. A far cry from the 30,000 promised. Worse still, they can't pay the bill. Only about half the money has been raised. The ships are ready anchored and waiting sails furled like sleeping giants. The Venetians are not amused. They're merchants, not missionaries. Their patience has limits. You stand on the docks and watch the Crusader leaders pace back and forth. What now? They can't turn back. They can't go forward. The Pope expects them to leave soon. The fleet is built. The money is missing. Then the Doge of Venice, an old man named Enrico Dandolo, offers a solution. He's in his 90s, nearly blind, but his mind is as sharp as a sword. He proposes a deal. There is a city, he says, called Zara. It rebelled against Venice. If you conquer it for us, we'll forgive your debt. Zara is a Christian city. The Crusaders hesitate. Attacking fellow Christians wasn't in the brochure. But then again, the ships are ready. The Pope is watching, and the debt hangs like a millstone around their necks. So they agree. You're beginning to feel it, aren't you? That slow, gentle twist in the story. A crusade meant to liberate Jerusalem is now headed toward a Christian city in the service of a trading empire. The cross on their shields begins to look off. But most of them don't notice, or don't care. They board the ships in late summer, their sails full of wind and half-spoken doubts. The sun sets behind Venice as the fleet pulls out. It's majestic, eerie, and a little bit crooked. As you sail with them, yes, you're on one of the ships now, you hear murmurs. Some men talk of sin, some of glory. A few whisper about Zara. One knight, wrapped in a wool cloak, leans over and says, "We're not going to Jerusalem, are we?" You don't answer, because deep down, you already know. This crusade won't bring salvation. It will bring smoke. And you are just beginning to hear the crackle. A deal with Venice. You wake again, but this time the sea smells different. The salt is stronger, the wind is more methodical, and the voices, they're not chanting prayers, but counting coins. You're in Venice now, not just a city, but a floating empire of sails and silver. The year is still 1201. The Crusaders, eager and idealistic, have arrived at the mouth of the lion. But they are not met by priests with incense. They are met by merchants with contracts. The Fourth Crusade is preparing to set sail, not yet for Jerusalem, but for somewhere. The details, it turns out, are flexible. You stand among a crowd of knights and clerics, their armor polished, their banners freshly embroidered with crosses. They're here to answer the Pope's call, to win back the Holy Land, to bathe in glory, and maybe even, if lucky, salvation. But Venice has other ideas. The Doge Enrico Dandolo steps forward, not in armor, but in silk and velvet. He is in his 90s, nearly blind, but he walks like a man who can still smell weakness and profit. He welcomes the Crusaders warmly, like a father welcoming sons who've arrived just in time to clean his attic and pay for the privilege. The Doge proposes a deal. "We Venetians will build you a fleet," he declares, "enough to carry 30,000 men across the sea. Warships, transports, supplies. The works." The knights cheer. Then he adds, for the modest price of 85,000 silver marks. The cheering dims. That's a staggering amount of money, more than most kingdoms keep in their vaults. But the Crusaders are undeterred. They're men of God. They'll raise the funds. God will provide. Or at least the barons will. They sign the agreement, and Venice begins building. It's a sight to behold. You watch from the edge of the Grand Canal as ship after ship rises like skeletal giants from timber and tar. The air smells of sawdust and ambition. Venice transforms into a floating fortress, not for herself, but for the army of Christ. The months pass. Summer rolls in. The ships are ready. But the money is not. By the deadline, only 12,000 Crusaders have arrived, less than half the expected force. And of the 85,000 marks, barely half has been paid. You feel the mood shift. The Venetians, craftsmen of patience, begin to scowl. The Doge, once charming, grows quiet. The Crusaders, once proud, begin to squirm. What now? Cancel the crusade. Sail anyway and hope God forgives their debts. Then Enrico Dandolo steps forward once more. "There is another way," he says. His voice is soft but cuts through the sea breeze like a dagger. "There is a city called Zara, a rebel city. It belongs to Venice, or it should. If you take it back for us, we will forgive your debt." Zara is a Christian city, Latin, Catholic. The Crusaders hesitate. Some gasp, others whisper, a few stare at the ground pretending not to hear. Attacking fellow Christians. That wasn't the plan. That wasn't in the sermons. That wasn't what the Pope had said. And yet, the ships are ready. The food is packed. The wind is favorable. And the debt is real. The leaders meet under a canvas tent. The debate is long, quiet, and full of phrases like the greater good and temporary sin. They pray. They consult. They rationalize. And then they agree. You sit on the dock that night, watching the fleet bob gently in moonlight. Around you, men sharpen swords while trying not to meet each other's eyes. The sails flutter softly like sighs of doubt. You hear one knight say, "Maybe God will understand." Another mutters, "Maybe we'll just be excommunicated." They laugh nervously. And it's not really a joke. From the Doge's balcony, you see a light still burning. He is awake, perhaps thinking, perhaps counting. Below 12,000 Crusaders prepare to launch the Fourth Crusade. But not to Jerusalem, not even close. The city of Zara falls. You wake before dawn. The sea is calm. The sails are full. You're on a ship again this time, heading not for the Holy Land, but for a Christian city, Zara. You don't know much about Zara. Few do. It's small, walled, once loyal to Venice, now defiant, a pebble in the shoe of a merchant empire. But this morning, it glows pink in the rising sun, perched peacefully on the coast of the Adriatic Sea. It looks harmless, like a painting of a town that never expected to be famous. From your spot on the deck, you watch the fleet, dozens of ships in tight formation, all flying crosses on their sails. They look holy. They feel less so. Behind you, some Crusaders are praying. Others are arguing over how to split loot that technically doesn't exist yet. You take a breath. The wind tastes of pine and distant fire. Then the drums begin. The Doge's flagship sounds the call. Flags rise, orders are shouted. And just like that, the Fourth Crusade is no longer theoretical. It is happening. The ships drop anchor just beyond the reach of Zara's catapults. Siege engines are offloaded with the slow rhythm of inevitability. Horses whinny, knights tighten straps. You hear someone mutter, "Still doesn't feel right." You agree. The city of Zara shuts its gates. The bells ring once, then fall silent. There's no diplomatic message, no last-minute surrender, just a strange collective holding of breath. You watch the Crusaders erect their camp. Tents bloom like mushrooms across the field. Wooden towers are dragged into place. Ladders are sharpened. Arrows are sorted. The mood is quiet, not focused, but tense. As if everyone here is hoping someone else will decide not to do this. But no one does. You wander near the siege line. A knight is polishing his sword, though it's already clean. Another is writing a letter to his wife. "We may reach Jerusalem soon." He lies. A third is whispering to a priest asking if sacking Zara counts as a mortal sin. The priest doesn't answer. He just offers a blessing. The assault begins on the third day. There are no speeches, no fanfare, just a low horn, the thud of hooves, the creak of wooden towers rolling forward. Zara's defenders fire a few arrows. Some hit, most miss. Their numbers are small, their walls aging. The city was never built to withstand a crusade. By nightfall, the gates are breached. You hear the screams before you see the smoke. It's not a battle. It's a stumble into chaos. Crusaders rush into the streets, some with purpose, others with confusion. Doors are kicked in. Windows are smashed. Some homes are spared, others looted. You see a chalice thrown into a sack next to a loaf of bread. A statue of Mary lies shattered in an alley. A child is pulled from a cellar, eyes wide, holding a stuffed lamb. The noise is unbearable, but somehow it's quiet too. Because it doesn't feel like victory. It feels like a mistake no one knows how to stop. You follow a knight. As he steps into a church, pauses, then sits on a pew, exhausted. He doesn't take anything. He just stares at the stained glass broken by an earlier blow light, cutting jagged colors across his face. He starts to cry, just a little. You leave him there. That night, the Doge enters the city. He does not gloat. He does not kneel. He simply walks the streets of Zara with the careful, satisfied pace of a man who just collected on a very large debt. The Crusaders set up camp within the walls. Fires crackle. Meat roasts, coins change hands, and in the dark corners of the camp, guilt hangs thick as fog. Then, news arrives, a letter from the Pope. He is furious, enraged. He has excommunicated everyone involved in the attack. The Holy Army is now outside the church. You sit by the water's edge, the waves gentle, as if mocking the violence behind you. The flames from Zara's houses reflect on the surface like dancing ghosts. One knight approaches his boots caked in soot, his hands trembling. "We were supposed to save the Holy Land," he says, not to you, but to the sea. "Instead, we just burned a church." You say nothing. Because what could you say? The exiled prince of Byzantium. The fire in Zara still smolders when the next twist in the tale arrives, not on a ship, but on a quiet road beneath a gray Venetian sky. He doesn't look like a savior. In fact, he looks a bit lost. His name is Alexios Angelos, the exiled son of a blinded emperor, the nephew of a usurper, and now somehow the last best hope of the Fourth Crusade. You first spot him standing near the edge of the Crusader camp, wrapped in velvet that used to be regal, but now carries the creases of too many cold nights. He has a quiet panic in his eyes, the kind that says, "I've rehearsed this moment 1,000 times, but I'm still not sure it's real." He's only 19. But he has a plan, Alexios wants his throne back. His father Isaac II once ruled the Byzantine Empire. That is, until his own brother Alexios III overthrew him, had him blinded, and tossed both him and his son into a dungeon. Typical Byzantine family drama. But now, the boy has escaped, fled across the Adriatic, and come to the only people desperate enough to help him, a bunch of unpaid, morally confused knights who just accidentally burned a Christian city. He gathers the Crusader leaders under a worn canvas tent. The Doge of Venice is there, his blind eyes, as calculating as ever. The French nobles listen carefully, some out of interest, some out of boredom. Alexios clears his throat and begins. His voice shakes only once. "If you help me take back Constantinople, I will reward you," he says. "I will give you 200,000 silver marks. I will supply your army. I will reunite the Eastern and Western churches. I will give you glory gold and God's blessing." It is a bold pitch, too bold maybe. But desperation makes men generous, and Crusaders even more so. You sit just outside the tent, eavesdropping like a good ghost. One knight murmurs, "That's more silver than Venice has in her vaults." Another replies, "And more promises than any 19-year-old should be allowed to make." But the offer sticks. Because here's the truth. No one wants to admit the crusade is stuck. Jerusalem is far. The coffers are empty. The Pope is angry. And the men are hungry. This boy, he offers a way forward, even if it's in the wrong direction. The leaders deliberate for hours. Some are appalled. Some intrigued. A few pray. One suggests flipping a coin. Finally they agree. The Fourth Crusade will go to Constantinople, not to pray, not to pilgrimage, but to install a prince. You watch the Doge shake Alexios's hand. It's a strange sight, one of the most powerful men in the world, grasping the hand of a teenager who smells faintly of seaweed and fear. The deal is sealed. Over the next few weeks, preparations begin. Maps are spread, ships repaired, weapons resharpened. The Crusaders murmur to one another, "We're going to Byzantium," as if saying it aloud makes it real. You sit near the shore one night, as the ships creak in the dark, dreaming their own wooden dreams. A group of knights pass by deep in thought. "We're helping a Christian prince," one says, justifying aloud. "We're restoring an empire," another adds more hopefully. "We're getting paid," says the third, and they all nod a little too quickly. And you lie back on a rock, eyes closed, listening to the waves, because deep down you already know. The deal has been made, but the city that waits on the other side of the sea has no idea what's coming. The arrival at Constantinople. The sails stretch like cathedral roofs. The oars dip in rhythm, slow and silent. And in the early morning haze of 1203, the city appears at first just a shimmer on the horizon, then a crown of domes and towers, and finally, all at once, the queen of cities, Constantinople. You are standing at the prow of one of the ships, wind brushing your face, heart oddly quiet. The Crusaders crowd around you, many seeing the city for the first time. For a few heartbeats, all is still. Even the sea seems to hold its breath. Because it's beautiful, and not just beautiful, otherworldly. Gold flashes from the tips of domes, purple marble gleams from palace walls. The towers of Hagia Sophia rise like silent bells above the skyline. Banners of saints and emperors wave gently in the morning breeze. No one speaks. One knight takes off his helmet almost by instinct. Even the Doge, blind as he is, raises his chin as if he can feel the light. Constantinople. The name itself sounds like silk and steel. A city of saints, secret scholars. A fortress of mosaics and mysteries. An empire in the form of a city, or perhaps the other way around. And now, a target. You watch the Crusaders shift uneasily. For months, they dreamed of glory. Now, they stare at something too large to fit in their dreams. From the decks, messengers are sent ashore. Letters carried with trembling hands. The message to Alexios III, the ruling emperor, is simple. Step down, return the throne to your nephew Alexios IV, or we will come in and take it. The answer, nothing. Silence. And then a few days later, torches are lit along the walls. Not welcome fires, warning fires. The people of Constantinople do not cheer the arrival of their rightful heir. They do not line the docks. They do not throw flowers. They whisper in alleys. They pray in darker corners. They prepare poorly for war. You walk along the shore, watching Crusader ships anchor in tight rows. Engineers sketch diagrams in the sand. Tents bloom like canvas flowers. Inside the city, Emperor Alexios III does little. He holds council meetings that go nowhere. He smiles too much. He promises too little. His voice wavers when he says, "They won't dare." But you know better. Because you're here. And you can already hear the creak of siege towers being built. At night, you wander the edges of the camp. A bonfire crackles. Knights stare into it like it might tell them what to do. One of them turns to another and says, "This isn't what I signed up for." The other shrugs, "We've come this far." From your spot near the waves, you look back at the city. It still doesn't know. It doesn't know the deals that were made in tents and taverns. It doesn't know the desperation simmering just offshore. It doesn't know that the Fourth Crusade, the army of Christ, is about to throw grappling hooks over the walls of the greatest Christian city in the world. It doesn't know it will fall not just in stone, but in soul. But that's still to come. Tonight, the sea is calm. The banners flutter. The stars blink overhead. And Constantinople sleeps, not in peace, but in ignorance. Walls that once seemed eternal. You've seen walls before. Stone ones, wooden ones, broken ones. But never like this. The Theodosian walls rise before you like mountains carved by logic and obsession, 3 layers thick, towers stacked like watchful giants, built to keep out empires, built to last forever, and for nearly 1,000 years they did. They kept out Persians, Arabs, Bulgars. Even the mighty armies of Islam couldn't crack these walls. Generals wrote poems about them, kings changed their war plans just to avoid them. Pilgrims wept when they saw them, certain that nothing so strong could ever fall. But now, you stand here with a rope in your hand and a nail in your boot looking up. And suddenly, they don't seem so invincible anymore. The Fourth Crusade has set its sights on them. Tents stretch from one end of the horizon to the other. Siege towers creak under construction. Ships bob tightly in formation just offshore. Banners flutter in a wind that feels colder than it should. You wander the perimeter at dawn, stepping through the fog. Knights inspect the ground. Engineers argue over tower heights. One man squints at the wall and says, "She looks tired." And maybe she is. Not cracked, not broken, but weary. The defenders of Constantinople are disorganized. The Emperor Alexios III is busy doing what he does best, very little. He holds councils that end in mutters. He makes promises that vanish into wine. Inside the walls, the people are restless. Outside the walls, the crusade is sharpening. But you are caught in the stillness before something breaks. You walk closer to the walls, touching the stone. It's cold, smooth in some places, chipped in others. You find a carving, perhaps ancient graffiti, depicting a lion fighting a snake. The lion is fading. Back in camp, preparations accelerate. The Doge is consulted. Knights polish their armor. Ships are loaded with ladders and oil and siege hooks. Torches are counted. Water is rationed. Prayer becomes routine, though less hopeful, more rehearsed. You hear a conversation near the supply wagons. "We'll never get through those walls," one crusader says. "Then someone will open them from the inside," another replies, eyes narrowed. You blink. Inside. Is that really possible? The answer comes faster than expected. On a moonless night, you are awoken by footsteps, hurried, uneven, desperate. A messenger is breathless. He's come from the edge of camp. "Something's happened," he whispers. You follow? Past sleeping horses, past guards who are suddenly wide awake, past fires now burning brighter. Then you see it. A gate once sealed shut is swinging open from within. There's no battle cry, no drums, just the soft grind of hinges and the sound of a door doing something it should never do. Trust strangers. The reason, no one knows for sure. Some say it was bribery. Others say fear. Maybe someone inside finally realized Emperor Alexios III wasn't worth dying for. Either way, the gate is open, and in the dark, the Crusaders slip in. Not charging, just entering. Quietly, carefully, like a guest entering a friend's house, unsure if they're welcome or not. The city does not resist. Because the emperor has fled. You hear the news while standing by a cold fire pit. He ran, someone says, took the treasury and disappeared in the night. Left his throne, left his people, left the walls. In his absence, chaos blooms. And into that chaos steps a very familiar figure. Alexios Thorth, the boy prince, the hopeful heir. The one who made the promises is crowned co-emperor beside his restored father, Isaac II. For a moment, it feels like the story is complete. The exiled prince has returned. The rightful rulers are back on the throne. The Crusaders are inside the greatest city in Christendom, not as conquerors, but as guests. You stand in the plaza, near the Hagia Sophia, watching citizens blink in confusion. Some cheer, others cry, a few simply watch. The walls still stand. But now they are guarding what? Not a kingdom. Not peace. Just a strange, awkward truce wrapped in gold and silk. But you can feel it in the wind. Something's wrong. You touch the stone again, and it no longer feels eternal. A city unprepared for betrayal. You would think the worst is over. The prince has returned. His father, the blinded Isaac II, is back on the throne. The usurper has fled. The Crusaders are no longer at the gates, but inside the city, welcomed, even if cautiously. And yet, you can feel it even in the air. Something isn't right. You walk through the streets of Constantinople the morning after the crowning. The banners have changed. The guards have new colors on their cloaks. Priests ring bells for the restoration of the rightful order. But the people look wary. A shopkeeper sweeps his doorstep, not looking up. A child tugs at her mother's sleeve, asking, "Are they going to leave now?" And a man beside you mutters, "They don't speak Greek. How long will they stay?" The Crusaders, meanwhile, are trying to enjoy their temporary victory. Tents remain pitched just outside the palaces. Horses drink from ancient fountains. Knights stroll past shrines they don't understand, pointing and whispering. They are not conquerors. But they're not pilgrims anymore either. They're guests, awkward ones, loud ones, armed ones. And they're still waiting to be paid. Remember the promise, 200,000 silver marks. Supplies, ships, troops, church unity. So far, they've received barely a taste of it. Inside the Blashernaya Palace, young Alexios IV is discovering a bitter truth, being, Emperor doesn't mean the treasury is full. Byzantium has seen better days. The vaults are half empty, the bureaucrats are unhelpful, and the clergy are skeptical of this Latin-backed boy on their golden throne. You hear a heated conversation in the gardens one evening. A Crusader leader demands payment. A Byzantine official replies, "It will come, soon." The word soon means nothing anymore. To meet the first installment of debt, Alexios begins melting sacred relics. Candelabras are stripped from altars. Chalices, once held by saints, are broken down. Even icons, paintings kissed by generations of worshippers, are turned into bullion. The city doesn't take it well. At first, there are whispers. Then riots. Greek citizens accuse Latin knights of theft. Latin knights accuse Greeks of hiding treasure. Churches are vandalized. Markets close early. A monastery is set on fire. You wander past the Forum of Constantine one morning and see angry crowds shouting in both languages, neither side truly understanding the other, but understanding the rage just fine. It's not war yet, but it's heat, cracking, tension beneath marble and mosaic. Alexios IV tries to appease both sides. He fails both. To the Byzantines, he's a puppet of the West. To the Crusaders, he's a liar with an empty coin purse. One night, you pass a chapel where a monk is painting over a Latin cross slowly with tired hands. Later, near the seawalls, you hear a knight shout at a sailor, "We should have gone to Jerusalem. This city doesn't want saving. It wants bleeding." Then comes the whisper, a dangerous one. That maybe, just maybe, they should take the rest of the money by force. You sit near the docks watching firelight dance on water. Behind you, the Queen of Cities groans not from battle, but from betrayal, from too many promises, from too many guests who've overstayed their welcome and brought swords instead of sandals. And you know, deep in your quiet listening mind, Constantinople isn't falling from the outside. It's falling from within, fires in the night. It begins like most terrible things with silence, a silence too wide, too deliberate, the kind that hums between buildings like breath held too long. You wake just after midnight, not from a sound, but from a feeling. The air is wrong, warmer than it should be, thicker. You sit up from the stone bench you've claimed as a bed and sniff once. Smoke. Not from cooking fires, not from incense, something darker, sharper. You scan the skyline. At first, you see only shadows. Then, far off near the dock's flames, a thin line of fire, dancing against the backdrop of silk banners and oil lamps. You blink once, twice. And then, the wind shifts, the flames grow teeth. What begins as a flicker becomes a finger, then a hand, then a roar. You hear shouting first in Latin, then in Greek, boots slamming on cobblestones, metal clanging against metal, a scream, a bell, a cat hisses past you, then disappears into the dark. You start running, not toward the fire, but through it, because now it's everywhere. Cloth awnings go up in seconds, thatched roofs melt like sugar, smoke coils into alleys like a living thing. Even stone seems to groan as the heat wraps around it, and no one knows who started it. Some say it was an accident, a fight between Crusaders and locals that tipped over a torch. Others say it was arson, revenge, a signal, a distraction. But the truth is, it doesn't matter. Because it won't stop. The city isn't burning like a battlefield. It's burning like a betrayal. You see a family climbing out of a second-story window, a merchant throwing buckets at a blaze too big to care, a Latin knight trying to help only to be chased off by a crowd screaming murderers. You duck behind a broken pillar. Around you, chaos breathes like a beast with a dozen mouths. And above it all, Hagia Sophia still stands. Golden, untouched, for now, but even its walls look nervous in the flickering light. The Crusaders are divided. Some try to stop the flames. Others fan them, looting homes under cover of firelight. And many just stand watching eyes, wide helpless, as if they expected this nightmare to come wearing a different uniform. You pass a chapel where candles, once burned in devotion, now trampled by boots and panic. You step over an icon of the Virgin Mary cracked in two, her painted face warped by heat. You try not to look at her eyes. Because she's not looking at the fire. She's looking at you. Later, near the Forum of Constantine, you stop and breathe only to cough. Ash floats like snow. And behind it, the silhouette of the Crusader camp glows not with warmth, but with something uglier. Somehow, even the night feels disappointed in what it's become. You hear someone whisper, "We were supposed to free the Holy Land." Another voice, "This was the Holy Land." The fire burns for days. By the time the winds die down, a third of Constantinople is gone. Entire districts are ash. Families are missing. Gold melted. Paintings vaporized. Archives lost to time and heat. No one wins. Not the Latins, not the Greeks, not the ghosts. Just fire. And now, you sit beside a fountain, empty, cracked, still steaming from heat. You dip your fingers in the last puddle at the bottom and draw a small cross on the stone beside you. Not for faith, just to remember that something sacred was here. Once, before the night decided to forget it. The siege tightens. You'd think that after the fire there'd be silence, or sorrow, or something like healing. But no, what comes instead is sharpening. The smoke still clings to the rooftops like a bad dream. Whole neighborhoods are gone. Children are gone. Trust is gone. And now the Crusaders are no longer visitors. They are enemies. You walk past the burnt edge of the Latin Quarter, where once glorious homes now resemble skeletons. A man picks through rubble for a coin. A child clutches a doll with half a face. No one looks at you. No one looks at anyone anymore. Alexios IV, the young emperor, the boy who once promised riches, reunion, redemption, has failed. His coffers are dry. His friends are few. His people hate him. The Crusaders despise him. And so, in a palace room lit by too many candles and not enough support, he dies. Strangled, smothered, gone. You hear the news from a sailor first, then from a monk, then from everyone. The story changes slightly, each time poison garrote betrayal, but the ending never does. He is dead. And with him, the last thin thread of diplomacy snaps. In his place rises Alexios V Ducas. Young, ambitious, sharp, and furious. He wastes no time. He rallies what's left of the Byzantine Guard. He orders walls repaired. He commands siege weapons built. He tells the Crusaders leave or burn. You walk through the outer markets and see new soldiers on the ramparts. Crossbows being cleaned, boiling oil in giant vats, banners torn down, repainted, raised again. The city isn't weeping anymore. It's watching. The Crusaders do not flinch. Instead, they tighten the siege. Ships move closer to shore. Wooden towers groan under their own weight. Ropes are measured, tar is mixed. Shields are painted black. At night, you sit between the two camps and hear the songs drift across the water. Greek chants, haunting and ancient. Latin hymns tired and cracked. Both sides praying to the same God. For different things. You listen quietly, wondering if he's listening back, wondering if he knows who to help. The Doge, now deep into his 90s, sharpens his voice like a blade. He calls for full assault. Enough delay, he says, enough pretending. If the city will not pay us, then let us take our payment in walls and blood. No one argues anymore. Not even the priests. A storm rolls in, not rain, but wind and heat and tension. You see it in the way knights now sleep with swords at arm's reach. The way walls are no longer just defenses, but targets. The way children are sent away from the city center. Even Hagia Sophia has dimmed. Its candles flicker, like they've grown tired of pretending this is still holy ground. You pass the harbor and hear a Crusader blacksmith hammering at dawn. With each strike, sparks fly like curses. He isn't singing. He's spitting. A Latin baron steps beside him and says no more games, no more crowns. This time we take the city, all of it. You don't respond, but you know they will. Because something has changed, not just in the plans, or the leaders, or the strategies. Something deeper, the fire burned away the mask. Now it's just a siege, like any other. Except this one wears a cross. The gates are breached. You wake before the sun, not because you meant to, but because something in the air changed. It's colder, somehow, emptier, as if the wind knows what's about to happen and wants to hide beneath the sea. You step outside your tent and look toward the walls of Constantinople, and there is movement. Not frantic, not loud, just steady. Siege towers rolling, bridges unfolding. Ropes being pulled across trenches like nerves strung too tight. And in the middle of it all, a gate. Not the front gate, not the grand arches, but a smaller one. Hidden from view, cracked, rusted, barely defended, you walk closer, unnoticed among the pre-dawn shadows. There, in the pale mist, a small group of Crusaders is gathered silent, waiting. They're not attacking. They're entering, through a door that should have stayed closed for another 100 years. The lock has been broken, maybe from the inside. Maybe by someone who grew tired of watching kings fail. Maybe by a hand that wanted payment or safety or just an end. Whatever the reason, the gate swings inward like an exhale. And just like that, they're in. Not charging, not screaming. Just walking, slowly, carefully. Like this is not a conquest, but a funeral procession. Inside the city, torches flicker. A dog barks, and then nothing. The defenses are too scattered, the guards too unsure, the people too numb. There is no defense. Only confusion. You follow quietly, passing under the archway that once kept out entire empires. You half expect it to shudder, to reject you, to scream, but it doesn't. It just lets you in. You step into a street paved with history. Each stone beneath your foot holds a century of prayer of empire of blood. But tonight, it holds only the sound of your breath. You walk past a bakery still warm from a fire that died hours ago. Past a shrine with wax pooled in circles, forgotten mid-prayer. Past a marble lion missing half its face. The Crusaders spread like a shadow, slipping into every corner. They don't loot, not yet. They don't shout, they just move. As if the city itself has stopped fighting, not just them, but time. Near the Blashirne Palace, someone lights a torch. Another opens a heavy door. Inside a throne room, golden and empty. No one sits there now, because Alexios V is gone. Fled into the night, just like the last one. The city, it seems, is ruled by shadows and silence now. Somewhere behind you, a bell begins to ring. Too late. The sun is rising, and Constantinople has fallen. Not with a scream, not with a roar, but with a slow, stunned breath. You stand in the plaza where emperors were once crowned, and you feel the stillness settle like ash. The Crusaders are here. Truly here. And everyone knows what comes next. Not glory, not salvation, but the dividing of a corpse, the fall of a dynasty. You'd think that when an empire ends, it would be loud, that there'd be trumpets, or shouts, or at least someone somewhere trying to say the right words. But here in Constantinople, the fall of a dynasty happens like a sigh. The throne sits empty. The emperor is gone, and no one knows who to blame first. You walk through the Blashirne Palace, its marble floors smeared with boot prints. Gold mosaics stared down at you, their saints half lit by broken windows. The air smells of rosewater and ash. There are no guards. No nobles, just silence. The great Komnenos and Angelus families, once rulers of 1,000 cities, are scattered, some in hiding, some in chains, some already halfway to exile. You pause outside a half-open chamber door. Inside, a noble woman sits, staring at the wall. Her crown rests on a table beside her upside down. You don't speak. She doesn't move, because there is nothing left to say. Outside, the Crusaders gather, not as liberators, not even as victors, but as inheritors of collapse. They walk through the palace like tourists in a tomb. One knight picks up a goblet, turns it in his hand and says, "Is this real gold?" Another replies, "Who cares? No one's here to stop us." And they're right. The empire didn't fall in battle. It fell in retreat. In resignation, you step into the throne room. There it is, the golden seat of Eastern Rome, empty. Its cushions flattened, as if the last ruler left in a hurry. One armrest is stained with something that looks like wine, or maybe blood. You don't want to know. A child enters behind you barefoot, silent, clutching a wooden toy in one hand, and nothing in the other. He looks at the throne, then at you. You nod. He nods back. And you both understand this isn't a place for kings anymore. It's just another room. A few hours later, the looting begins. Not the wild kind yet, but the quiet kind. Paintings are removed for safekeeping. Books are collected for translation. Statues are relocated for display. The Crusaders form lists, committees, invent rules. Some try to be noble. Others try not to be obvious. But the halls grow emptier with each hour. In a garden, you overhear a knight whisper, "We didn't destroy the empire. It destroyed itself." You want to believe him, but you don't. You remember the boy emperor, the relics melted to pay a debt. The fires, the open gate, the cracked lion. You walk to the outer walls, looking down over the city. The sun sets behind a haze of smoke and gold, and all across Constantinople, the past has begun to rot. What remains? A throne without a dynasty without an heir, and a city filled with voices who still can't believe what's happened. You lie down near the cisterns that once gave water to emperors and priests. The ground is cool. The stars are blinking confused, and somewhere in the silence you hear it. Not weeping, not wailing, but something softer, the sound of a history falling asleep. Smoke over Hagia Sophia. You walk with your head tilted back. Because above you, Hagia Sophia is breathing smoke. Not fire, not yet, but smoke, thin gray, uncertain, like incense that forgot why it was lit. The great church stands tall as it always has. Its dome curves like the sky. Its mosaics shimmer beneath soot. The chandeliers sway slightly, though there is no wind. And you wonder, can a building weep? Because this one seems to. It weeps from its windows, now cracked. It weeps from its arches, now shadowed. It weeps from the silence of people who used to sing here and now. Simply wait. You step inside. The doors groan. Not in protest, but in grief. Inside it is darker than you remember. The light filters through smoke instead of glass. The air smells like wax dust and memory. Latin knights stand near the entrance, helmets off uncertain. A priest walks past them, eyes on the floor, mouth moving in silent prayer. You can't tell if he's praying for protection or forgiveness. In the center of the nave, a group of crusaders argues, quietly but heated. One of them gestures towards the altar. "We need a sign," he says. "If we take this, the others will follow." Take what? You walk closer slowly, and there it is, the altar of Hagia Sophia, a place where emperors once knelt, where relics were kept, where God, if he watches such things, might have paused a moment longer than usual. And now they want to carry it away, not for destruction, for distribution, for reallocation, as one of them calls it. For Europe, you sit on a bench carved with saints who no longer look at anything in particular. Nearby, a young crusader approaches an icon of Christ Pantocrator. He pauses, reaches out, touches it with 2 fingers, then withdraws, then bows, then leaves. You don't follow him, because behind you, a man has started humming. Not a hymn, Just a tune, something wordless, childlike, and you recognize it. It's not Latin, it's Greek. The janitor, maybe, or a monk, or a ghost. You let it wrap around you like candle smoke. And for a moment, Hagia Sophia is itself again. You imagine the chants. The gold, the hands raised in blessing. The thousands of feet that once filled this space with breath and voice. Now it is breathless. The gold is fading, and the only raised hands are there to take, not give. Outside, the smoke thickens. Someone has lit another fire nearby, accidental maybe, or not. You step back into the light and look up. The dome seems lower. The cross at its peak leans slightly, like it's listening for something that no one will say aloud. You walk the perimeter of the building past Crusaders, trying not to look like looters. One of them picks up a reliquary, shakes it gently, then tucks it under his cloak. Another removes a book from a shelf, flips it upside down, and shrugs when the letters make no sense. You pass an altar boy sweeping ashes out of the apse. He doesn't look at you, but you hear him say quietly, "It still smells like heaven." Maybe. Or maybe that's just the smoke lying to you. You sit on the steps outside as the sun begins to set. Behind you, the walls of Hagia Sophia gleam faintly, less like gold, now more like old honey, and you realize the church has not fallen, but it has been unwritten. Its story is still here, but so is everyone else's. The Crusaders, the Byzantines, the merchants, the memory of Alexios IV, the echo of Alexios V, and you, sitting here, listening to the soft, slow crackle of sacred wood losing its shape. Looting the city of gold, you wake to bells. Not for prayer, not for warning, but for division. Someone is counting churches. Someone is assigning palaces. Someone is drawing invisible lines through a dying empire and calling it ours. You walk out onto the steps of an old bathhouse and see them knights with scrolls, merchants with seals, scribes with wax. They are not dressed for war. They are dressed for inheritance. Constantinople has not just been taken. It is being tallied. You pass a street where the stones are still stained with soot, and above it, a Crusader commander stands on a balcony pointing down. "This quarter belongs to Burgundy," he says. "And this monastery," someone asks. He shrugs, "Break it in half." You move through the markets, what's left of them. Doors hang crooked, curtains flutter through broken glass. And inside, men move with a strange reverence, not for the place, but for the value of what it once held. A knight opens a chest and finds relics wrapped in silk. He holds one up, a bone, thin, polished. "Saint?" he asks. "Probably," someone replies. "Pack it." You find your way to a basilica near the sea. Inside it is dark, burned, but not yet empty. 3 men are pulling candlesticks from the altar. One curses as the wax sticks to his gloves. Another holds up a gold icon and whistles. Behind them, the painted eyes of saints watch silently from half-cracked walls. You sit near the door, hands in your lap. No one notices. No one asks why you're not helping. No one knows what side you're on. Because at this point, sides are meaningless. Faith has become currency. Stone a souvenir, gold a gravity no one can resist. You walk past Hagia Irina. Its dome is cracked. A pigeon sits atop the cross. Inside, a group of Venetians is dismantling an altar. Gently, as if pretending it's restoration, not removal. Later, near the hippodrome, you see a crowd gathered around a bronze statue. A Crusader captain climbs atop it. Pulls, pushes. The statue groans, then falls. The crowd cheers, not in celebration, but in relief. Because now it's theirs. Because now it's portable. Because now it's real. You don't cheer. You just watch. As one era ends not with flame or sword, but with a careful inventory. By evening the churches have been stripped. Not all, but enough. Reliquaries, crosses, chalices, mosaics chipped loose like coins from a fountain. Some items are burned by mistake. Others, by design. You hear a night murmur, "We're not looting, we're preserving." Another adds, "We're saving these from the Greeks." The third one laughs. And doesn't say a word. You pass a house where a Latin soldier is sitting on a silk-covered chair, eating dates from a golden bowl. He looks at you and says, "I never thought holiness would taste sweet." You don't reply. You just keep walking, through halls that no longer echo with hymns. Through plazas, where trade once hummed and now only whispers. Through a city that still looks like gold in the right light, but now feels more like dust with good memory. You end the day on the Galata Bridge looking back at the skyline. Domes. Smoke. Flags that don't belong here. And the glint of metal being carried away in wagons, carts, sacks, and sleeves. And you wonder, if a city forgets its saints, does heaven still remember its name? A crusade turned upside down. You sit by a well, watching the reflection of a golden dome tremble in the water. It used to look like heaven. Now it looks like guilt. Around you, Constantinople murmurs in its new language, Latin curses Venetian bargaining, the hush of footsteps carrying what doesn't belong. The Fourth Crusade, once a sermon in steel, now sounds more like an excuse whispered through teeth. You rise, wander the streets. You pass knights, seated on steps, polishing loot instead of armor. A priest counting coins beneath a broken fresco. A merchant selling icons from a blanket like they're apples. You pause. You listen. And for the first time, you hear it in their voices. They don't know why they're here anymore. Jerusalem is a distant ghost. Christ's tomb feels as unreachable as the moon. And salvation, that was 3 ships and 6 broken oaths ago. You walk past a church-turned warehouse. Inside banners rolled like rugs, relics sorted like spices, chalices stacked beside spears. A knight sees you, offers you a handful of incense. Still smells like faith, he says. You don't take it. Because now, even the air feels borrowed. You reach the old imperial stables. Horses once bred for emperors now drink from cracked marble bowls. A squire leans against the wall, eyes closed, whispering a psalm under his breath. He forgets the words halfway through. Doesn't try again. Later, you find a Crusader captain standing before a broken statue of Christ. He's drunk. He gestures to the shards and says, "We were supposed to kneel, not trip." You sit beside him. He doesn't ask who you are. You don't ask if he regrets it. Because the answer is already in his silence. In the square near Hagia Sophia, someone builds a wooden platform. Not for preaching, not for worship, but for dividing spoils, one chest at a time. Relics, silks, bones, justice measured in weight. The men cheer, but the cheer sounds thin, tired, like even their joy has blisters. You find a map pinned to a wall. It shows the route to Jerusalem. Still there, still marked. Still clean, untouched by everything that came before. You trace it with your finger, then tear it down. Not in anger, in acknowledgement. Because this crusade no longer moves, it only spins. Like a compass that's lost its north, but keeps pointing anyway. At night, a monk stands on a balcony and sings. It's a hymn, ancient, Greek, beautiful. No one understands the words anymore, but everyone listens. Even the horses pause. You lie on a marble step, hands behind your head. Above you, stars blink through a city of smoke. And you think, if the angels came now, they wouldn't sing. They'd whisper. And not in Latin, but in ash. The empire torn in pieces. You find the map in the ash. Not a large one, not royal, just a scroll curled and frayed at the edges, left on a broken table in what used to be a tax office. It shows the Byzantine Empire, once vast, once proud, once stained in purple and gold. Now it's being divided, not in war rooms, not in strategy halls, but in auction tents. You walk through one now, set up near the hippodrome. Inside, long tables covered in silk maps and wax seals. Lords from France, Italy, and Flanders gather around pointing, arguing. Carving. This coastline is mine. No, we agreed. Thessaloniki goes to Boniface. I'll take Crete. You stand beside a young squire who stares at them all with wide eyes. They're cutting it up like it's a roast, he whispers. You don't correct him, because he's right. You pass a tent marked Venetian claims. Inside, crates already packed, contracts already signed, territories bartered like pearls. Venice doesn't want the empire. It wants the ports. The spice routes, the harbors, the cities that face the sea, like open hands. They leave the dusty inland to the knights. And take the soul of the empire through the waves. Later, you find a Crusader noble with a piece of parchment in his hand and a crown on his head. It's too big for him. It tilts. He smiles anyway. I'm a lord now, he says. Of what you ask. He looks at the paper. Shrugs. Somewhere east of here. You pass a group of Byzantines sitting in a ruined library, not mourning. Not resisting, just stunned. One man flips through a manuscript, fingers tracing Greek letters that will soon be banned. Another sharpens a knife not for battle, but for trade. A third just stares at the wall, whispering the name of a city that no longer exists. You sit beside them. Say nothing, because what is there to say when home is now a prize? When every cathedral is a checkbox, when every hill has a new name overnight. You walk to the Church of the Holy Apostles. It's closed. Not by order, by exhaustion. On the door, someone has written a phrase in Latin and crossed it out. Underneath, someone rewrote it in Greek. Then someone smeared both into a bruise of ink. You don't go in. Because even God needs a moment to breathe. At the docks, crates are labeled with cities. Nicaea, Trebizond, Epirus. Names that once flew beneath one eagle, now flapping on different flags. And still more claimants arrive. Princes with forged papers. Merchants with Venetian allies. Soldiers with enough gold to buy a bishop and enough swords to silence a protest. A man walks by, dragging a cross behind him like luggage. Where are you going? Someone asks. He smiles. Wherever they let me still speak Greek. At night, fires dot the hills outside the city, not from invasion. From camps of refugees who no longer belong where they were born. You sit beneath a cracked statue of Justinian, watching shadows pass in every direction. One carries a scroll, another a crown. The third, nothing. And yet, they all seem heavier than the empire they just broke. Echoes of betrayal. You hear the first echo in a monastery. A monk scribbling in the corner, quill scratching across parchment, faster than breath. The words are in Latin. The tone is defensive. We did not mean for it to happen this way. You lean against the doorway, listening. He's drafting a letter, one of many that will go out to abbots, bishops, kings. It tries to explain the unexplainable, not justify. Just soften. Because word of Constantinople is already spreading, and it sounds nothing like glory. You walk down the cloister. Another monk recites a prayer under his breath, but his voice falters on the word forgiveness, because no one knows who should forgive whom. Later, in a cathedral, farther west, you pass a pulpit where a priest speaks to a restless crowd. They did what they had to, he says. You look around. No one seems convinced. Someone in the back coughs. Someone near the front mutters, "They burned our brothers." You step outside. The bells ring behind you. But they don't sound holy. They sound like excuses in bronze. You find a group of knights around a fire days later. They don't shine anymore. Their armor is dull, their eyes duller. One of them holds a relic stolen probably and says, "Will the Pope take us back?" Another laughs. "We won him land. He'll build us a chapel." You look at the fire. It doesn't answer. At a university in Paris, a young scholar asks his tutor, "If we kill Christians to save Christianity, who wins?" The tutor closes the book, says nothing, and moves on to the next lesson. You see letters pinned to a church door. They were provoked. They had no choice. They followed orders. You take one down, fold it, place it under a candle, and let it burn. Not for drama, but because the parchment smells of doubt, not truth. You walk into a library. Shelves are being reorganized. Greek texts pushed aside, Latin copies replacing them. "Standardization," says the librarian. You don't respond. You just run your fingers along a spine with faded gold. It crumbles a little under your touch. At the court of Rome, a messenger bows before the Pope, offers documents, reports, names. He waits. The Pope sighs and says, "Let history judge." You exit through the back gate of the basilica. There's a child selling trinkets, tiny crosses made of melted bronze from Constantinople. He offers you one. You ask, "Do you know where this came from?" He shrugs. "Somewhere east, where the fire was." You buy it anyway. Because it's already yours. Because betrayal, once finished, becomes merchandise. You end the day in silence, back in the ruined city, under the faint shadow of Hagia Sophia, where nothing echoes quite the same. A knight walks by and says, "We came to fight unbelievers." You nod. And he looks at his hands. They were us, the Latin Empire of Constantinople. You wake to trumpets, but they don't sound like victory. They sound like ceremony, forced echoing through half-empty streets. The Latin Empire of Constantinople has been declared. You stand in the square once reserved for emperors of Byzantium. Now it hosts foreign banners. Flemish, Venetian, papal. A new throne has been carved. Not from marble, but from what was left behind. The man seated on it is Baldwin of Flanders. He wears his crown like it still hurts. You watch him smile. A thin smile, a ceremonial smile. Because what he rules over is not an empire, it's a fracture in gold. You walk through the palace. Its mosaics are still beautiful, even beneath soot. A few new Latin officials walk its halls unsure which door leads where. The kitchens are quiet. The chapel's quieter, no incense. No Greek hymns, just Latin orders and echoing boots. You find a group of nobles reviewing scrolls. They speak of titles. Lord of Thessaloniki, Duchess of Achaia. Baron of some island I can't pronounce. You listen. It sounds like a play, but no one's clapping. You pass a monk sweeping broken glass from the steps of a church. He hums an old Greek tune. Quietly, carefully. As if even melody needs permission now. At the port, the ships arrive. Not with warriors, but with administrators, scribes, priests, traders. They've come to civilize, to claim, to rename. You hear one mutter, "At last the city belongs to Rome again." But when you look up at the skyline, those bent domes, those hollow towers, it doesn't feel Roman. It feels borrowed. In the Forum, statues of ancient emperors still stand, but someone has placed Latin plaques beneath them. New names, new meanings. You wonder if the stone mines, if the statues care. You walk into the library, a small one. What remains? A boy is reading from a Greek manuscript. A knight leans over. What's it say? The boy shrugs. The knight nods, satisfied. Then takes the book. Later, near the cisterns, you see soldiers drawing new maps. Borders pulled tight, like rope across a wound. They talk of Latin permanence, of fortresses, of taxes, of walls. But you know something they don't. Because you've walked these streets, touched their cracks, heard them breathe, and you know. The city isn't theirs, not really. It's watching, waiting. Because Constantinople remembers. It remembers emperors with blinded eyes, princes with melted crowns, fires that whispered scripture as they burned. It remembers falling, and it knows how to rise. You lie beneath a fig tree at dusk. The sky turns the color of old bronze. A bell rings, faint. Off-key, but still ringing. And for the first time in days, you almost smile, because empires rise fast. But they forget something. Stone outlasts paper. And memory waits in silence. The long road back. You leave the city for the first time in months, not fleeing, just following the road, because something inside you whispers, this isn't the end. Constantinople still breathes, even beneath Latin boots, but you want to see where the old blood is gone. You walk east, through villages where children still speak Greek in hushed tones, through valleys where monks bury icons at night and pray in silence, through fields where old banners are hidden beneath hay. You reach Nicaea, once a provincial stop, now a beacon. Because here, a man named Theodore Lascaris gathers scholars, priests, generals, those who survived the fire, the betrayal, the division. They don't speak of revenge, not yet, but of continuity, of keeping the liturgy alive, of copying every book they salvaged, of remembering the names before they're renamed again. You sit in a garden beside the rebuilt city walls. A scribe teaches a child to read starting with the letter phi. A general sharpens a sword he hasn't used in weeks. A widow lights a candle and places it beside a tiny salvaged mosaic of Christ. You ask her if she thinks Constantinople will ever return. She doesn't answer. She just lights another candle. You keep walking. To Trebizond, where another remnant of the empire has taken root. A coastal kingdom, half forgotten, but alive. They build ships here. Small, quiet ones, fast. The kind that slip past Latin patrols and bring messages to monks in hidden valleys. You sleep in a small chapel by the sea. Waves echo off the stone, and in the dark, someone sings a hymn. Not new, not angry. Just ancient. Like a seed, trying to remember it was once a tree. You wake to sunlight. A boy stands at the altar reciting the Beatitudes. His Greek is perfect. You smile. Because not even maps can silence memory. Later in the mountains of Epirus, you find another echo. A court without a crown. A palace without gold. But still documents are signed here. Decrees made. Refugees taken in. They call it a despotate, a word that once meant rule. Now it means resilience. You sit with a soldier drinking bitter wine. He says, "We don't want Constantinople today. We want tomorrow." You nod, because that's how roads work. One step at a time, one echo at a time. One liturgy whispered through a keyhole at a time. You head west again. And from every city, every village, every ruined basilica, you hear it. Not shouts, not horns, but a kind of breathing, soft, persistent, like something remembering itself after a long sleep. Whispers through the ruins. You return. Not because the road is easy, not because the empire is whole, but because something inside you still listens for the whisper, the one that echoes through marble dust and absence. Constantinople waits not proudly, not defiantly, but quietly. You walk her streets again. They've changed. The Latin banners still hang. But they've frayed. The soldiers still march. But slower now. Even their boots seem to avoid the deepest cracks in the road. You step into an abandoned courtyard. Grass grows through the stone. A fountain, once fed by aqueducts, now holds only leaves. But on the far wall, you see it. A mosaic mostly broken. Just one face remains. A saint, smiling. Barely. You reach out, touch the tile. It's cold, but not dead. You wander past the hippodrome. No more races. No more cheers. Just pigeons and memories. And beneath your feet, the stone murmurs, "We are not finished." You enter a church stripped of its treasures. No gold. No choir, only a bench and a breeze. You sit. You listen. And in the silence, you hear it, a cough. A footstep. A prayer. Someone is still here. Someone always is. You pass a young woman lighting candles near a broken altar. She doesn't see you. She's focused. Each flame she lights says something no sword can silence. I remember. You keep walking. Past market stalls, rebuilt with scrap wood. Past children kicking a ball made of linen and twine. Past old men playing chess on a board carved into the ground. The pieces don't match. But the game continues. You reach the palace ruins. A guard stands by the gate. He's not Latin. He's not Greek, just tired. He nods at you, as if to say, "We all survived something." You walk to the seawall. Below the Bosphorus glitters. Ships pass. Some Latin, some Greek, some nameless. The city breathes them in. And breathes out something older than flag or coin. It breathes out memory. You sit on a broken column. The wind smells of salt and ash. You close your eyes, and you hear it. A whisper, not in Latin, not in Greek, but in something older. A sigh made of stone-fire silence and stubborn hope. It says, "We are not what was taken. We are what refuses to be lost." You stay until the stars come out, and even then, you don't leave, because some ruins are not endings. They are waiting rooms. And now, my friend, you've made it to the end. You've walked beside empires in decline through streets once paved in gold and now softened by dust. You've stood at the gates of a city not once conquered but remembered, again and again, in stone, in silence, in sleep. Maybe you noticed it, how the story changed as you drifted further. Not a tale of heroes or villains, not a war of good and evil, but of choices, of weight, of what happens when men forget why they march, and remember too late what they've lost. You've listened to fires crackle across painted domes. You've heard prayers in languages you don't speak. You've sat beside kings, monks, ghosts. And now you're here, at the edge of the ruins, at the softest part of the night, so let it go. Let the maps roll up. Let the gold fade. Let Constantinople fall asleep again, just for now. And maybe in your dreams, you'll walk those streets again. But this time, they'll be whole. So if this journey brought you peace, even just a little, like, subscribe, leave a gentle comment, tell me where you drifted off or what you dreamed of. And if you'd like, we'll meet again somewhere quiet, somewhere ancient, somewhere waiting. But for now, turn off the lights, lower the air, pull your blanket just a little tighter, and sleep well, dream soft, and wake bright. Good night.